Way at all unwell, you guys have got to go upstairs. Do not stay down here. Please, as a bad idea. If you stay down here, you sit down on these benches trying to fight that feeling, you guys are not going to feel any better. So don't do that. Go upstairs, see Carolyn, she'll have some tips and tricks to help you guys feel better. Do not stay down here. And if you guys want, also, there are white party bags on the sides of the doors there. If you need them, take as many as you need and do not hand them back to the crew because we do not want those back. Aside from that, all being said, with the reef here itself, while we're going over it, if you guys see any specific species of fish you want ID, feel free to ask me, interrupt me, same way with questions. Do not hesitate to at any point throughout this narration. Feel free to ask me because I'm a massive fish nerd. I love fish ID. It's like one of my favorite things ever. So if you guys see something specific you want ID, point at it so that I can see it. A lot of times people will try to ask me ID a fish after and they'll try to describe it to me, but it's a lot harder to do that like that. And sometimes people aren't seeing the exact colors that they really are, or body shape, whatever it might be. So feel free, point at it. I'll be able to tell you exactly what it is as long as you point it and show me here while we're on the reef. A couple other things. While we're over the reef here too, like I said, I mentioned a second ago, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me while we're out here. And I guess to get started here, one of the first questions people usually ask is how deep the water is. It's number one. And while we're out here, the depth varies a lot. Molasses Reef, the structure is very dramatic because it's a very old reef. So the corals have had a very, very long time to build up this reef to the size that it is. And you have very dramatic depth changes out here quite often to the point where, like at the sand here, it'll be 25, maybe even 30 feet, and it'll come up super high, sometimes 15 feet up off the bottom in like a straight cliff to the giant ledge. And you see that up and down the entire time that we're out here. And that's a huge part of the reason why so much life congregates around Molasses Reef here, because there is such massive structure. There's all these ledges, caves, crevices, places for fish of all different species, not only fish, but crustaceans, mollusks, I'm losing the word, cephalopods, anything like that to be able to hide. There is a million places here for things to be able to hide and keep away from predators. That also allows this place to be a lot more productive with many different kinds of food, forage that everything on the food chain out here eats. And so you have lots of different kinds of life that gather to these spots, especially to the large reefs like molasses, for various different reasons. To take shelter, to stay and feed for a while, and then there's even certain species that come out here for very specific reasons, and they come out in very large numbers to aggregate out here. A great example is for spawning. There's a couple of the different snapper species that come out here really soon, coming into early summer here, to spawn, and one of the locations is here on Molasses Reef, especially the mangrove snapper. That's one of the primary spawning aggregations of fish that we get out here are the mangrove snapper. And the last couple months, like the late spring months into early summer, are their peak times. The full moons of those months, so usually of May, June, and July, those full months we see the largest aggregations of mangrove snapper out here on the reef. And they'll be massive, massive. So up to thousands sometimes. It's really, really cool stuff. But like I was starting to mention when we first got on the reef that we're on right now is called Molasses Reef. It is a sanctuary preservation area. A lot of us locals around here just call those spa zones. And what do you have, big spotted fish down there? I didn't get to see it. Dang. Well, if we see another one, definitely point it out. Feel free, if you guys see it up here too, feel free to point stuff, shout at it too, in case you see something, so I can try to spot it before it goes. But anyway, like I was saying, the reef we're on right now is called Molasses Reef. A lot of us call them spa zones out here for short, and they are extremely important places. They're very highly protected zones. They're some of the most strictly enforced, highly protected marine areas in the entire country, not just here in Florida, but in the whole country. There is literally almost nothing you can do out here except for what we're doing now, which is going over it with the glass bottom. Or if you were diving or snorkeling, you can dive on the reef, but you cannot touch or take anything on the reef here. Even if it's a single grain of sand, you cannot touch or take anything out here. And obviously that includes spearfishing, lobstering, any sort of harvesting of anything out here, of course. But then you also cannot anchor out here as well. All of these spa zone reefs are also no anchor zones, and that is super important for the preservation of the living coral that still survives on these reefs. These spa zones of the Florida Keys are some of the last remaining strongholds. For that fish right there, with the long black pectoral fins, that was a black margate there. That's a really cool fish you always get to see on the reef, because they generally are rock and cave dwelling species, but they're a member of the grunt family, the second largest member of the grunt family, and they also are crustacean eaters. They definitely specialize in eating hard-shelled organisms, so they're eating a lot of crabs, shrimp, mantis shrimp, cleaner shrimp, sometimes small mollusks too. Any hard-shelled organism, those guys are eating, and sea snails too. But like I was saying too, all of the spa zones out here, there are no anchor zones. A huge part of that is, again, to preserve the living coral that still survives out here. It's extremely important, because already a lot of these reefs have suffered dramatically as far as the amount of living coral coverage that we no longer have out here. That, and also it continues to degrade. There has been a lot of good happening very recently. A lot of times when you're in the media and you look up anything about coral, pretty much everything on there is negative. There is not much talked about the positives that are going on with the reefs out here, because there definitely is quite a lot, especially over the past year. Last year we had the best year that we've ever had for corals down here. And granted, it was very extremely small victory, but still a victory nonetheless. And pretty much for the past 40 years, coral coverage, not only here in the Keys but around the world, has only gone down and gotten lower and lower. But now it is barely just a tiny little uptick last year, and it's a huge deal. Also too, I wanted to mention this. We're going over this large ledge here, and we have a bunch of different species of fish that are kind of in the middle of the water column, kind of dipping up and down, left and right in the water column. All of those were planktivores. And there's a few different species that you can lump under the section of planktivores. You got the sergeant majors, which is a very common fish, easily one of the most common fish on the entire reef. They are the large. Oh, there's a stingray on the surface. I don't know what. Did anybody see that? There was a southern stingray on top. It might come. Look, there he is right there. You guys see the brown shape? There's a southern stingray on the surface. All right on top. He's off the port side of the boat there. I can see through the window. There he goes. Wow. That is. I've never seen one do that. I don't know what the heck that thing was doing. That's crazy. There might have been a big shark around or something, because those are almost never do you see them on the surface in like 20 feet of water. I don't even know. That's wild. I've never seen that before. Actually, ever. That's super crazy. That's wild. Well, that was a southern stingray. Super odd behavior, though. Extremely odd behavior. I have no idea what that thing was doing. But it was, I saw him for a split second, his back end under the front glass here. And he was literally probably a few inches from the glass. That is so odd. I have never seen that before. And then he kept on going on the surface on the port side of the boat. That was so weird. Very odd. But that was a southern stingray. They are benthic feeders. They specialize in benthic feeding. So what that means, it's a very fancy way of saying that they feed on the bottom, and they're specialized for that. Their mouths are on the bottom of their entire bodies. They could not physically eat something that was over the top of them unless they flipped completely upside down. So they are exclusive to feeding on the bottom. And they do that by a few different ways. The stingrays are a member of the cartilaginous fishes. The cartilaginous fishes are anything from your sharks, rays, skates, guitarfish, sawfish, are all cartilaginous fish. It's one of the 3 mega groups that you can split all fish in the entire ocean into. And the cartilaginous fishes are very famous for a few different, very unique traits. One of them, as their name suggests, is that their skeletons are completely made out of cartilage. But the other one aids in their ability to be predators very well. And that is that they have small electroreceptive pores under their noses, some of them under their heads, and they're called the ampullae of Lorenzini. What they are designed to do, it's an extra sense that sharks and rays have that allows them to detect electromagnetic pulses and fields in the water. And every single living thing out here gives off a light electromagnetic field. And the sharks and rays have the capability to feel it. Oh, you saw it. Still something there? Oh, sunglasses. Oh, I'll get them after the narration, so don't worry. But anyway, they have the ability to feel electromagnetic currents. The stingrays use that to their ability because they essentially make themselves a giant metal detector. They'll sweep over soft sediment, so they're very well adapted for hunting over soft sediment or mud, because that is where they're going to find the prey they like to eat, which is usually small crustaceans and mollusks that bury under the soft sediments like the sand and mud. Once they find what they're looking for, their little mental metal detector goes off. They start blowing away the sand with their wings. They use their wings to blow the sand or the mud off of whatever it is they want to eat. And then they use the muscles under their bodies to actually push and corral that whatever it is they're trying to eat up toward their mouth. So they pin it to the ocean floor and then creep it up to their mouth to where then they can eat it. And that's how the stingrays hunt. So usually when we see southern stingrays out here, they are over areas like this where you have that fine light sand on the bottom. That is where you'll find them because they'll be down there hunting, or they'll be completely buried in the sand, and sometimes there's little pieces of their body sticking out, their tail or their eyes. But so that's why it's incredibly odd to see one on the surface like that. I've never seen that before out here on the reefs. Super interesting. So I don't know what's going on there. There might have been a really big shark around to spook that thing on the surface. It's really the only thing that I can think of for why it would be right on the surface like that. It's a behavior that you see commonly with spotted eagle rays, which is a completely different species. They're a stingray, but they live their lives a lot differently. They are usually cruising in the middle of the water column. Very often you'll see them right on the surface too. And oftentimes they'll breach, they'll jump out of the water and free jump to free parasites from their gills. But so it's just super odd to see a southern stingray like that. That was very interesting. Those are the sergeant majors. I forgot to mention that earlier. The sergeant majors are the black and yellow striped fish that you see out here. Very common. They're the largest member of the damselfish family. And I was starting to talk about the plankton because that's what they are. The sergeant majors are very well adapted plankton feeders. They have extremely good eyesight. Very powerful eyesight. They can see these little microscopic plankton as they're drifting through the current, and they pick them out one by one. So their eyesight is absolutely incredible because they are able to see these little microscopic plankton as they're flowing through, and they'll eat them one by one. The sergeant majors will oftentimes be schooling around these other different species of fish that are also planktivores themselves, and they'll all kind of usually aggregate and feed together. A couple of those being blue and brown chromis, which we saw earlier with the sergeant majors and that really big school we saw. And a lot of times they'll also be with Atlantic creole fish and creole wrasse too. Also, and then here we're coming up on another really big school of these planktivores here. That blue fish I wanted to mention down there, that's a queen parrotfish. Very awesome fish. You see a lot of them out here. But all these small fish that are lining this edge here are all planktivores. There are sergeant majors, there's brown chromis with them, there's also blue chromis too. The chromis, you can tell, are chromis because they have the little sharp forked caudal fins, little sharp forked tails. And the brown chromis will have a little yellow spot right at the base of the tail, but the blue chromis will be all electric blue. Beautiful, beautiful little fish. And they're awesome to see out here, really, really cool. And when it's really calm out here sometimes, they'll be all corralled right on the surface, eating those plankton, because they strategically place themselves in spots where the reef ledge comes up very close to the surface, because the higher you come closer to the surface, the denser the flow of plankton is. So those sergeant majors and the other planktivores contract and position themselves right in front of a ledge that comes up very high, so that they are closer to the surface, near the richest plankton flow, but also being close enough to the structure of the reef to get away from the predator if they need to. Because being up on the surface is a very risky move for them. There's a lot of predators out there that would gladly take advantage of them being in that very vulnerable position, because they can pin them up to the surface to corral them up there and keep them there. But I do want to talk about corals a little bit before I keep going on about fish, because I'm going to see something super cool here at some point that's going to distract me again. So, yeah. The status, that's a very good question, because it's a super multifaceted answer. Because I get that question a lot, and the answer is never as simple as people think. Well, number one, the coral, the coverage of living coral out here on the reefs of the Keys has dramatically reduced. Not only here, but around the world. This is a problem that's being experienced on the barrier reefs of the entire world. Here in the Keys, we have lost a massive amount, well over 50% of the living coral coverage out here. That's for a variety of different reasons that I really want to go over. But very quickly, I want to touch on the color of the coral, because I do get that question all the time. And there's a few different things that go into that. Number one, a lot of the coral species here in the Atlantic are not super crazy colorful. Some of the most important corals in the Atlantic that are the most beneficial to the reef are, a great example is your staghorn and elkhorn coral. They're also, unfortunately, some of the rarest coral we have out here now. But they are not brightly neon colored. They are kind of a rusty brownish orange, and they have really bright white tips. If we see some of them, I'll try to point them out. There isn't a lot of them here on Molasses, but there is a lot of outplanted staghorn coral that is starting to do pretty well. And if you see some, I'll point it out. Like, really, the most colorful, naturally occurring hard coral species we have is probably the mustard bill coral, which is that yellow encrusting coral that we've been seeing all around the reef. There's a big French angelfish down there too, with the yellow-edged scales. That's a beautiful fish. It's the largest species of angelfish we have down here. Big old French angel back there. But that's really what I would say. The mustard hill is really our brightest species. There is another species that's pretty brightly colored out here. It's bright red, but it's not even a coral. It's a sponge. It's the fire sponge. They can be very, very bright red. But they're really, as far as like that goes, that's really it. There are some documented cases of staghorn coral that turns kind of like a really fluorescent purple or green, but that is a stress sign. That is not what you want to see in a staghorn, because if you see that, it usually is right before they get bleached. I know there's some cases documented in Australia of staghorn turning that fluorescent color, and that is really bad. That is not what you want to see. A lot of times, when you're looking at like a dive magazine or even like YouTube videos and stuff of reefs, and you got like crazy, super bright colors, a lot of the time they're down there with a high-powered flash or flashlight that is creating a secondary source of light on the bottom, which actually brings out more color than you would see from the surface of the reef and of the coral and of the fish too. The reason for that is because water absorbs light. Therefore, it also absorbs color that we are able to see. As you get deeper in the water, more and more of that color is absorbed by the water. That is why the entire ocean and the sky is blue, because blue is the last color that's absorbed by water. So a great example that I can use for that phenomena is growing up. I grew up out here fishing and diving, and I still am a fisherman all to this day, very much. But growing up, we did a lot of spearfishing, and when you're down there on the bottom, there's a fish that we target a lot called a white snapper. They're a beautiful fish. They got a really bright scarlet red tail, pink sheen on their entire body. They're a beautiful fish. When you're down there, even in like 20 feet of water though, that white snapper is completely gray. Just gray. Like washed out. There's no color on that fish whatsoever. Now it's not because the fish itself doesn't have any color on it. It's because you cannot see the color on that fish because it's at the bottom. And there's no secondary light source. The only light coming down is from the sun. So you can't see any color of that fish. But when you spear it and you're bringing it up to the surface, all of a sudden this gray fish starts turning that pinkish scarlet color as you start to bring it up to the surface, because that light starts to come back as you come up closer to the surface. All that color returns. So when you're looking at the coral and everything on the reef from the top looking down, a lot of that color naturally is going to wash out because the water absorbs a lot of that color. So it's very difficult to see the full potential. There's some staghorn right there. It's really hard to see, but it's kind of like it's growing in sticks sort of with white tips. There's some outland staghorn on the top of that rock there. And that stuff's super important for the reefs. It used to be in far larger numbers, but unfortunately, to this day, there are not many left out here at all. There's a lot of efforts. Here's a bunch of outlanded staghorn. This is what I'm talking about. This is a lot healthier too. You guys can see right there, it grows in like that stick sort of shape. It looks like the horns of a stag, and it's got those white tips on it. That is one of the most elaborate coral species that we get out here. Those are all juveniles. They are not fully mature colonies. They're probably only a couple years old, maybe even a little bit more. But those staghorn are beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful corals out here. And they're usually like that kind of like rusty orange color, and then they have those really bright white tips. But they're very important for reef building. They're a very important species for the coral's ability to build and grow a reef out here. And it's because of how elaborate their exoskeletons grow, how they grow out, upward and outward. The same thing goes for the elkhorn, upward and outward, and they almost grow into a kind of a tree-looking like shape. And that's incredibly important for the coral's ability to build a reef, because there's like so much to talk about with corals. Never have enough time. There's a bunch more staghorn too right there. Look at that. That's awesome to see. And that is all super healthy staghorn too with the white tips there. That's awesome. That is pretty much the future of our reefs out here, guys. Seeing those colonies of staghorn there. Because that coral that I'm pointing out, that staghorn, used to blanket the entire ocean floor here. The whole thing. This whole area we're over right now used to be covered with staghorn. But there's a lot of places now. We've already been over a few spots here on the reef where you guys might be able to see this like long, it looks like bones and sticks laid over the bottom there. That is fossilized staghorn coral. Here's some of it right there. Looks like a bunch of bones down there. Because it kind of technically is. It's a bunch of fossilized staghorn coral that used to cover this entire reef. Here's a bunch of it right there too. And it's all long since been dead. But that staghorn coral, those babies we saw back there a minute ago, that is the future of our reefs, really. That is what we're trying to do out here. They are growing these corals, these more sensitive corals, that have taken a large toll the past few decades with the various different effects. And we're trying to focus on those species and planting them out here on already existing reefs to try to not only bolster the populations of those specific species of coral by putting them out here, but also so that when the coral spawn happens, which happens one night in September every year, exactly, they're putting those corals out here so that they can spawn and reproduce and put those larvae or that more endangered species of coral onto these reefs out here. And not only is the warming ocean temperature been a massive factor, but just as bad as the rising ocean temperatures has been the amount of human pressure that a lot of these reefs have seen, especially the reefs of the Keys that see a lot of tourism every year. One of the biggest things that you guys can do to help the reefs, even if you're just here on vacation for a couple days, 3 days, is go to the store and buy reef safe sunscreen, guys, because one of the worst things that has happened to our reefs are overexposure to man-made chemicals that are extremely harmful for the corals, especially sunscreen. It's a very common thing that everybody out here wears in the tropics when you come down here on vacation. If it's a spray sunscreen, it has chemicals for the reef that are annihilating the reefs out here, guys. So make sure to get reef safe sunscreen. Almost all the stores out here sell them. It's super important. Even if it says reef friendly, but it's a spray sunscreen, it can't be a spray sunscreen. It has to be one of the green lotion style sunscreen. So it's got to say reef safe. If you guys can do that, you are doing the biggest service that you can do while you're here on vacation to the reefs. Just make sure you guys are wearing reef safe stuff. Because those chemicals, they destroy the slime coat layer of the coral colonies, and that's essentially their immune system. Our immune system to us, that's what it is. Their slime layer is to that. And if it is broken down, it can become infected with disease, and it can destroy that entire coral colony. So just make sure you guys get that stuff. And if you guys have any other questions about the reef, or if you guys want any legendary recommendations, feel free to ask me. Once I put the microphone down, I'd be happy to pull you guys in the right direction and enjoy the rest of the ride back, guys. And if you guys are still feeling it, keep an eye out on this area. It's a great area to see big turtles. Sometimes you see big